So, Akis, I was just talking about the kind of share of mind that Nothing has developed these past few years. In fact, ever since you launched. In fact, I remember the time when the announcement came about Nothing as a brand getting launched. There was massive hype. There were a lot of fan clubs going. You have a huge community of very, very loyal followers that swear by your design. Give us an understanding of what was the strategy behind this kind of a launch that has been a success since the very beginning you guys started.
I think it started quite in a simple way. We look at ourselves as users, basically. And at the time, I think we were just not excited by what the market had to offer. Like everything looked the same. There was nothing to look forward to. And overall, a lot of negativity around technology, you know, like with like social media, skyrocketing, kind of level of depression associated to kind of social media consumptions. Everything looked the same. So for us, we look at ourselves as users and trying to kind of bring that excitement we once felt where we grew up with the launch of the first iPod, you know, interacting with the first iPhone. Those were magic moments. So we just wanted to kind of bring back that excitement. So the low-hanging fruit was to start with design differentiation. A lot of people got really excited because our whole point was to make a design that you could recognize from 2 meters away without looking at the logo. And then gradually the opportunity became bigger and bigger. We executed towards a strategy. Like first it was an audio product to have a proof of concept. Then we entered the smartphone industry back in 2022. And since then we've been kind of ramping up our portfolio. And last year was a massive year for us. We were the fastest smartphone brand here in India.
Right.
We grew by 577%.
Yes.
And while just kind of still experimenting. So it sort of shows that the market is eager for a new brand, that there is appetite for something new, something fresh. So yeah, we're extremely excited.
So when you talk about the kind of growth that you have gained in the India market, ladies and gentlemen, let me mention that Nothing actually grew by 567% in just the first half of 2024. I mean, 567%, that's crazy. So kudos to you and, of course, the entire team of Nothing that's putting all of these products together and, of course, building the brand as we are seeing it today. But you have now, you have earphones. You have, of course, the Nothing Phone 3 that's going to launch in just a few days from now.
3A first.
Right?
3A.
Nothing Phone 3, and you have a watch as well. What's coming up next from the Nothing Fold?
No, I think for us, so if you look back, like we started with kind of design differentiation and heavily focusing on software for the last 2 years, and we're extremely excited now with kind of AI coming along. While there has been a lot of buzzwords around using AI and so on, nothing has been anchored in real use cases. And you know, your smartphone is at the center of your everyday life. You know, the smartphone knows you better than yourself in a way. So we've been kind of thinking in a very pragmatic way in terms of anchoring and solving real use cases through that. So software will be a major focus for this year and the years to come, on top of like keep on refining our hardware value proposition.
So when you say that software is going to be your key focus, besides of course, you know, design innovations and inventions that will come about in your products, what kind of software focus are you going to give, and what is going to define the next phase of innovation, especially as far as smartphones and consumer tech is concerned?
I think the user interface hasn't changed much in a way ever since the first iPhone was launched, the sort of app-based approach. But now the world is changing. I think with the way we're interacting with our smartphone has drastically changed. So we kind of really rethink what that kind of new user interface is going to be and actively working on it. So we're going to be gradually rolling it out this year. And quite excited, you know, and I think that's our biggest opportunity. We entered in this market kind of really trying to rethink the whole user experience, both from a hardware level with the design and now heavily leading onto software. And, you know, when you start thinking about things in a different way versus kind of all the time settling for the status quo, and I think historically speaking, even though people think it's such a saturated market, you know, nothing has happened in the past few years. You know, everyone has been doing the same thing here in India. Brands have been focusing for value for money. You know, that's where all the sort of Chinese OEMs that have entered in the industry have built a level of brand equity, whereas we aspire to kind of redefine the user experience and also in a way bring a more kind of aspirational element to the brand. I think again, I think the new
So
generation...
what do you mean when you say aspirational elements? Give us some of the features that the Nothing Phone 3 will have that are going to be different from what the industry has to offer.
But I think it's overall, when you're interacting with a Nothing product, it feels fresh, it feels something different, yet something super intuitive. We're carefully thinking about the overall user experience as soon as you unlock your phone. And then, we've seen a lot of Nothing users, the first thing they do, they put the phone on the table. It's a product they're proud of. It's not just a functional product. And I think now, especially with a very young demographic here in India, people aspire more from the smartphone. It's not just kind of a tool. It's something we carry every day. It should be reflecting your identity in a way, and having a very differentiated design starts from there, but and then gradually, again, ramping up the software experience.
Right, and how are you really looking at then when we talk about smartphone offerings and of course consumer tech, how are you looking at this manufacturing in India story? Because when we look at data, it suggests that electronics exports from India have been amongst the top 5 categories as far as exports are concerned. India is also making 99%, meeting 99% of its domestic targets. How are you looking at that story? How are you looking at government initiatives with respect to PLI and other, schemes that are doing the rounds? Are you looking at expanding production right here in India? Because the government is also going to be coming up with a scheme that will give a boost to manufacturing components here locally.
Yeah, 100%. Again, last year we're the fastest smartphone brand here in India. We're not planning to slow down anytime soon, and that involves a lot more things. So we've been producing our products here in Chennai. We're now looking at other plans in terms of expansion and investments on how we can further develop our India business. I think it's such an exciting country. I think it's at the epicenter of innovation, and so much to be done here. And I'll be also spending a lot more time in India moving forward. I think there is such amazing opportunities, and we have a proof of concept from last year that things are working. With some level of struggle, but relatively with no effort. I think our product market fit is really strong here. And that will involve more initiatives from Nothing in India.
So
definitely.
when you say that, the Nothing story is growing rather strong here in India, but how strong is it when compared to the rest of the markets that you operate in?
It's definitely a very strategic market and focused market for us. I think here in India, it's incredible how people know the tech. I think it's, I've never, in Europe, the sort of tech-savvy audience is roughly around 3 to 4%. Here is over 20 to 30%. So people really know the tech. So as a new consumer tech brand, bringing a whole new perspective on what technology should be. Ever since from the get-go, we had such a strong level of excitement and support around the brand. And year after year, again, the multiples in terms of growth have been tremendous. So definitely it's going to be a key market for us and for the long term.
All right, so India is going to be a key market for you. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we are also seeing domestic consumption slowly and gradually pick up. Domestic growth story of the country has been a key driver of India's growth. But Akis, let me also ask you about the funding environment and funding ecosystem, because Nothing essentially was a startup. And up till now, you've raised about $250 million in funding. And that also at a time when there's been a slowdown in the startup ecosystem. So what are your key lessons to somebody who's trying to build a consumer tech brand in terms of wooing investors, and how to just sort of keep going even when the tide is against you?
Yeah, so to be honest, it was very hard in the beginning because no brand has succeeded in our industry in the last 10 years. No non-Chinese brand has successfully launched in China for the longest time ever. So it was really hard to convince people that we are going to be that brand. So in the early days, it was a bit harder, but then as we started executing towards a strategy, year one was like building a proof of concept, just focusing on design differentiation. And we started with an audio product. We sold over 500,000 units. Then that was our proof of concept. All right, there is appetite for a new brand. Then off the back of that, we raised a second round to start developing our smartphone. And then people were like, oh, you're crazy to even think about entering this industry because the value chain is extremely complex. You can get the product right, but if you don't get your marketing and generating the demand, then you go bankrupt. So you have to be very good at every single stage, the value chain when it comes to a smartphone product. We did that successfully with Phone 1. We sold over 700,000 units. Again, we then start building our own internal product capabilities. There we launched Phone 2, which again, the reception was incredible. It was mentioned as the most improved smartphone of the year by MKBHD, who is probably the most renowned YouTuber. And then last year was all about scale. So we took this kind of unique value proposition that we've created both on a hardware and software level and start entering different price segments. And as a result of that, again, in India, we grew by 577% year on year. So we've just been executing strategically towards kind of this growth path. And as long as you execute successfully, then it makes it easier to raise.
567% growth year on year. It's a very big target to achieve. What are your targets this year, especially from the India market?
I mean, as I mentioned, we're not planning to slow down, and if anything, last year was more of an experiment. See if we ramp up our investment, we start kind of scaling offline in India. We start doing kind of a bit more traditional campaigns, but not a lot. And boom, all of a sudden, we're able to go under this kind of...
You don't want to give a figure?
Eh?
You don't want to give a figure, a definitive figure that you're looking at?
I mean, we have our own figures. We don't communicate, but deep inside, I know that, again, last year we did it just an experiment. This year we're going to go a lot more serious, so hopefully even a stronger growth for this year.
One final question, Akis, because I'm being told that we're completely out of time.
Yeah, there was a big red sun.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Apple? Carl has spoken about Apple openly, but I want to hear your thoughts before we wrap up this session.
I mean, we share the same opinion. Apple is a massive company that needs to tailor to the mass audiences. So whereas for us, our opportunity is to have a more kind of focused approach with a very unique value proposition and also having the ability to have a bolder bets when it comes to the software innovation we're bringing. So I think we're super excited to be in our shoes today. We have a lot to do, especially with the whole AI revolution coming along.
Right. So nothing on the path to take bolder bets so far as the India market is concerned. Thank you very much for joining us
Thank
here
you so
at
much.
the Global Business Summit. Akis.
Thank you.